These videos are based on my book called Intergalactic Resettlement, Meet the New Neighbors. I am writing this book to share with you my paranormal experiences and to introduce you to the Intergalactic Resettlement program. It is my hope that this information will comfort those with similar experiences and inspire others to open their minds to alternative realities which benefit humankind. In 2017, my spiritual guides told me that it was time to come out of the closet and make public my ET experiences and the knowledge I received as a result. My goal is not to convince anyone about my truth, but rather to educate those who are open to this information. It is important to note that I do not represent the beings from the Intergalactic Resettlement Program in any way, and I am not their spokesperson. I only speak to what I know and experience for myself. I've been encouraged by my spiritual guides to provide information so that people can make up their own minds about the options they may choose from for dealing with future world events. The Intergalactic Resettlement Program may become an option when our physical planet is in crisis or transitioning, making it not safe to live here anymore. With all of the exopolitical contact that we hear about, it is important for you to know that I am not part of any Earth-based group, religion, politic, or philosophy, and I am not part of the secret space program. I wish to stress that there is nothing to be afraid of. These off-world beings are absolutely benevolent and loving. They have a do no harm mandate, and they do not interfere with human free will. Further, I do not know species or racial names, planet names or group names, and my ET friends are not from any specific star system. This is an unorganized, frequency-based movement. When we are ready and reach out spiritually, contact commences. For those of you who don't know, my name is Karen Holton. I'm a shamanic guide, a spiritual coach, and I have a talk show called The Quantum Guide Show, available on YouTube and Odyssey, and Forbidden Knowledge News and other social media platforms. The Intergalactic Resettlement Program, Meet the New Neighbors. Chapter 1, Clarification. As I mentioned in the introduction, I am writing this book to share with you some of my personal paranormal experiences and to introduce you to the Intergalactic Resettlement Program. It is my hope that this information will comfort those with similar experiences and inspire others to open their minds to alternative realities, which can benefit humankind. My goal is not to convince anyone about my truth, but rather to educate those who are open to this information and to inspire others who may have had similar experiences to come out and share their truths as well. So actually, you will be surprised to find out how many people have had ET experiences, thousands and thousands, and more we're seeing that this information is coming out on social media, which I think is great because there's a lot that is what we'll call outside of the construct that exists, even though it's not accepted or added to the information within the construct. Because why? Because it can really change things. Let's put it this way. It can really, really change things. And those that are in power here on planet Earth do not want to give up their system, and they don't want to give up the fact there's only a few of them and a whole lot of us. And it's the whole lot of us that are supporting the few of them. They're basically parasites. And I think that by examining other truths or alternative truths, we can actually see different ways of doing things, different ways of being, different ways of constructing reality. It's really all up to us. So although I had my experiences, actually it was about 2014, it's interesting to see how this has all unfolded for me. I had a lot going on between 2013 and 2015. I had been very, very ill. Recovery was very slow. And I was surprised as anyone that I started having these amazing intergalactic experiences. I don't have any special skills. I'm not anybody important, but they are what they are. And I guess there's a reason and there's a plan in place. So we can take confidence in that. So I would say it was about 2014 that this happened, and it actually happened within a 3-month period of our time. And I would go to bed at night and fall asleep. And the next thing I know, I had all these adventures. And then in the morning, I would wake up and I'd be in my own little bed. And I don't know if I was physically taken or etherically taken or consciousness transfer. I don't know. I don't have all the answers. And, but what I do know is that my memories have sort of spontaneously unfolded without any hypnosis or regression therapy. I haven't needed any of that. Back when this was happening to me, I thought at first I was dreaming, but I actually knew I wasn't dreaming. And the reason is because when I dream, I have very disjointed storyline. It doesn't make any sense. I might have 2 or 3 completely different experiences that I remember in the morning. And then when I go to bed the next night, I might not dream at all, or I might not remember my dreams, or I might actually just have completely different experiences in my dreams. So it's really interesting how this has unfolded for me. Now, the reason I have a fair amount of content, I think, is because time is extremely different in the realms that I'm able to go to. So what was about 3 months of our Earth time actually felt like about 3 years of, I don't know what you want to call it, space time or whatever. The amount of adventures that I participated in was much greater than that 3-month period. So I don't know if we're taken and then time is altered. I don't know if we just go into a different dimension where reality is very different. I don't know. I don't have all the answers. I can't explain a lot of things, but I'll explain as much as I can to you. So as I mentioned, my memories sort of spontaneously unfolded without any hypnosis or regression therapy, and they emerged slowly as I became more public with my experiences, and I don't have full recall. I can't explain everything. I just sort of remember what I remember, and I didn't learn about this phenomena from research or books. I actually have read a few science fiction novels in my day, not too many, and I've also been a big fan of the show called Star Trek. But these experiences that I had off-world, some of them I continue to have, they're not like anything I've seen on a movie, TV shows, or in any books. It's really quite a unique experience as I'm experiencing it. I know I use that word a lot, but it's okay. It's an experience. So the other thing too is after I had those experiences, I actually made sure that I didn't do any research on the subject because I wanted my experience to be really authentic. I didn't want it to be based on anybody else's philosophy or belief systems or experiences or anything like that. I wanted it to be my very own. And so until I sort of got things worked out in my own head, which took a number of years, I didn't do any research up until really quite a bit recently, but more about that in a minute. So I just know for sure that my experiences are not based on anybody else's work, not at all. And I kept myself kind of pure for a long time while I sorted it all out so that I wouldn't be influenced by the experiences or beliefs of other people. I felt that was really, really important. And let's see. Yeah, so I went public through social media in 2019. I actually started a little bit after 2017, but Augie Nost had a radio show, and he invited me on as his guest. And Universal Consciousness, it was called. I don't think he's doing it anymore, but he was the very, very first person who had me on his show and gave me a chance to talk about my experiences. I was so scared. I thought, oh my God, you know, something terrible was going to happen, because I finally decided to tell the truth. But nothing bad happened, only good things ever since. So I would say I really went public with my experiences in 2019. And after that, then I started to compare notes with other experiencers or contactees. And I was actually really surprised at how much similarity there is. So, I mean, worst case scenario, people might say, oh, Karen, you were having a paranoid delusion, or you're delusional, or whatever. And I go, yeah, well, we can't all be having the same delusion. You know what I mean? So that was very interesting too. And I want you to know, and this is super important, some of these points I did mention in my intro, but I want to say them again. I do not represent the beings from the Intergalactic Resettlement Program in any way. I'm not their spokesperson. So that's really important that you understand that. I only speak to what I know and experience for myself. And many people do have these kind of experiences, but most people don't remember. And there's a reason for that. And also, I don't have human language for all of my experiences. I speak English, well, not perfectly, but it's pretty much the only language I really know besides Pig Latin. And it's very limited. It's really a product of the construct we're living in. So it's kind of like, how do you talk about things, think about things that don't have words? It's more difficult for sure. And the words are like energy that help create our reality. But I've done the best I can to relate my experiences, my concepts, etc., in common English. So hopefully most of you out there know at least a bit of English and will understand what I'm saying. And the reason that I've been encouraged by my spiritual guides to go public with my experiences is because there's a lot of changes coming, And you need to know what your options are, what possibilities there are, because the construct is going to tell you only believe in them, you know, meaning the ruling class, the parasite class, that they know what's best for us, that they need to look after us. It's so not true. And by sharing alternative information with each other, we get an understanding that we actually have a lot more options and we're a lot more powerful than what we ever thought that we were. So we've got some world events coming, and the Intergalactic Resettlement Program might be an option when our physical planet is in crisis or transitioning, making it not safe to live here anymore. Now, I want to tell you a little bit about Earth. Earth has been populated by humans at least 5 times. I know of 5 reseedings of planet Earth. And people were taken and preserved or taught how to preserve life during these catastrophic events, so that humanity could continue or kind of get a fresh slate and start over again. So some of these disasters could be, you know, comets striking the Earth. It could be that because our planet's moving all the time. And I just want to mention here too, that I actually believe that neither the globe Earth or the flat Earth are absolutely correct. I've seen information and evidence of both. And I don't know, because I haven't been in our solar system in a spacecraft flying around is actually have a look at what our Earth looks like. And since so much of what we've been taught about history is just bold-faced lies, you know, I can't necessarily guarantee that. But based on my experiences, I have seen planets that are globes and not flat Earth. So I don't know what to say about that. But what happens on our planet is we have all kinds of geophysical stresses. If you want to look at it from the global perspective, I mean, globe meaning sphere-shaped planet perspective, you know, I don't know if it's true or not, but we're taught that we're flying around the other planets in our solar system around our sun, and our sun is flying through space. If that were absolutely true, then you could understand that we would end up coming in contact with perhaps other planets, other things that might actually destroy life on Earth. The other thing, of course, is the most common is our Earth goes through geological changes. Our Earth is alive and it is adapting. It's moving on to a better planet, if that makes sense. There is a lot of evidence of that. And so our Earth is evolving and it's transitioning. And so there are periods of time where it's very safe to live here and periods of time where maybe not so much. And this isn't just true for Earth. This is true for a lot of what we would call Class M planets, or planets that could support humanoid life. And so there are some options that may be available, but there's kind of a catch, and I'll get into that later on with my information. The other thing is, with all the exopolitical contact we hear about, it's important for you to know that I am not part of any Earth-based group, religion, politic, or philosophy, and I'm not part of the secret space program, not involved in any of that. Just me, myself, and I having these experiences and talking about them. It's also really important, I want to stress, is that there's nothing to be afraid of. These off-world beings are absolutely benevolent and loving. They have a do no harm mandate, and they don't interfere with human free will. But they might become available and involved in our lives when we ask for help and we prove that we're serious by altering our lifestyle and our thinking so that we can hold sufficient frequency for contact. That's a really important point. When you think about it, if evildoers and psychopaths were able to relocate onto other planets, they would just make a big mess wherever they went. They would make a big mess on board the city ships. They would basically, their frequency supports death and destruction and dishonesty and all that jazz. There's no way our ET brothers and sisters are going to move that, which I call it an infection, a parasitic infection. There's no way they're going to move that onto the big ships. There's no way they're going to move that onto other communities and settlements. It's not going to happen. And believe it or not, according to my contacts and the exopolitical work that I do, Earth is under quarantine, so is our solar system. And so there's a reason for that. It's to keep what's going on here contained until we hopefully wake up and smell the roses and make changes that, that are possible for us, because we're much greater than what we've been taught that we are. So the other thing I want to say is I'm really happy about Dr. Stephen Greer and the CE5 movement. CE5 is human initiated contact. And ultimately, we need to raise our spiritual vibration and we need to ask for help. Once we do that, and when we're sincere and we're really trying to be a better human being and somebody who would be in harmony with the belief systems and the perspectives of our ET brothers and sisters, at that point, they may come into your life, contact you, could be through dreams, could be through lucid dreaming, could be through remote viewing, could be through astral projection. By the way, those are all pretty much the same thing, just little different aspects. Lucid dreaming, remote viewing, astral projection. it's pretty much all the same thing. It's just sort of sliced and diced differently. But ultimately, when the student's ready, the master appears. And depending on how ready we are, how open-minded we are, et cetera, then appropriate contact can begin. But it all starts with us to initiate the contact. And I can't stress that enough. The other thing is, I don't know species or racial names. I don't know planet names or group names. And my ET friends are not from any one specific star system. This is an unorganized, frequency-based movement. And when we're ready and we reach out spiritually, then contact can commence. So you might be wondering, well, wait a minute, what about so-and-so from the Ashtar Command? And what about so-and-so who has talked about their experiences with Draco reptilians? And what about the Greys? And what about the Arcturians? And on and on and on it goes. Well, to be honest with you, I don't know much about any of that. And so you're going to have to go back and ask the people that are sharing their experiences more about that. But in my experience, the galaxy or universe even is full of diversity, full of activity. There's so much going on, and people are constantly immigrating and emigrating. They don't have any such thing as racial prejudice. They don't have concepts like that. That's Earth stuff. And so there would be no taboos between intermarrying people from different planets or different solar systems, or even, different galaxies. That doesn't happen there. It's a very different way of being. So when people say, oh, well, there's what do they call them? The white, blonde, blue-eyed, blonde, long flowing Fabio hair and all of that, and that they're from this specific planet. I've never seen evidence of that. I have seen very much mixing of different, what we would consider racial groups. Now, that's the other thing I want to clarify at this point, where all the humanoids are one species. We were created and we were set onto different planets, different ecosystems to develop, but we're all from pretty much the same kind of stock. Now, within that, there's a lot of diversity. When you look at humans, human beings are very diverse. Now, I know on Earth, they teach nonsense, critical race theory and things like that, and they try to make it sound like we're absolutely different groups of people. No, we're not. We're human beings from Earth, and we exist in huge diversity, huge diversity. Even if you take one skin tone of humans from Earth, the diversity with noses and ears and eye color, it goes on and on and on. And the same is true for when you're talking about intergalactic communities, okay? So you're never going to see one kind of person and they're from this planet. I've never experienced that. Now, I'm not in a position to doubt other people's experiences or stories. That's not my job. But I only am speaking from my truth and from my experience. And when you learn more about the resettlement program, it'll make more sense to you. On Earth, there's millions of us who share in the intergalactic work. And I was so happy to find out that I wasn't the only one, because I felt it was kind of a burden knowing what I knew, but now I know that I'm just part of a group here on Earth, that we've got specific things that we need to do, and that we're capable of having these experiences. So my experience is not unique. Not everyone has the same experiences, and we tell our stories many different ways, but I see this as complementary rather than competitive. And the galaxy alone is so huge, it will blow your mind when you look into how humongous it is. And so really then I have to ask, wouldn't there be room for all of our experiences? I know the big thing that I get from people is they go, well, what I don't understand is all the planets are so far away. By the time we get to them going light speed, it would be like 1,000 years and we'd all be dead. And we don't have the cryo or cryo or stasis chambers to make those long runs. Well, travel through space is very, very different than what you've been taught. And there are ways of going from point A to point B directly and not having to travel. So what I mean by that is instead of like getting in a boat and paddling your way to another island or traveling that way or in a car or on a train, it doesn't work that way, not at all. Those are beliefs that are held within our constraints as humans based on the propaganda and the kind of programming that we've received for thousands of years. In truth, we travel very, very directly, and it's amazing. And I'll get into that a little bit later in another episode. But I just want you to know that it's, for some reason, really forbidden to talk about or validate extraterrestrial experiences, travel, etc. And so because of that, it's the policy of the ET group that I don't know if I belong to them, but that I participate in interactions with them, to suppress our memories and before we return, so that we can remain embedded in the Earth's social political construct for soul development. So there's kind of a reason why this planet's fucked up. Not the planet, but the construct. It's because it gives us challenges to overcome for soul development. And this is also for our own protection, because many people today, when they go public with their ET experiences, they get ridiculed, they get stigmatized, they have their rights violated as they're diagnosed with so-called mental illness labels or just plain called crazy. So one thing that often happens is we start telling people, hey, I had this experience. It was great. I met ET. We went here. We did that. And 9 chances out of 10, maybe more than that even, people are just going to point at you and laugh. They're going to make fun of you, stigmatize you, and unfortunately expel you from your community. And that's all part of the plan. Just like, the powers that be do not want full disclosure. They don't want us knowing about all the amazing technologies and all the amazing beings that we could be having contact from and learning from. They don't want us to know any of that. And so it's considered extreme deviance within the psychiatric industry. And what is the psychiatric industry? It's simply a tool by the parasite class to keep us in order, to keep us drugged up, or to keep us in some situation where we're not sharing our stories and our experiences. And I want to talk a little bit more about that. In the 1980s, the medical industry switched from physical lobotomies to chemical. And this practice is one of the things that is holding back the spiritual and the intergalactic progress of the human race. So for those of you who don't know, prior to the 1980s, what they would do is if you were claiming that you had ET experiences or paranormal experiences, the first thing your relatives or your husband or wife would do is take you to the doctor and get you in to see a psychiatrist. The psychiatrist would then label you with a mental illness. Label could be schizophrenia, could be something else. But one thing for sure is they want to stop you from talking about those experiences or even validating that you've had those experiences. So prior to the 1980s, people got shunned. They got locked up in sanitariums. Which were very much like prison, horrible food, horrible conditions, all kinds of human rights abuses were going on. It was a pretty horrible, horrible situation. That's what they did with people. And then if you knew somebody who had an experience and you've had an experience, there's no way you're going to talk about it or share it or be open about it. because the same thing will happen to you. So besides that, what they used to do is do what they call lobotomies. And it started out with them just cutting through your skull and removing sections of your brain so that you couldn't function properly and you were much more compliant and you were missing those memories that you were sharing with people. But then later on, I'm not sure when, maybe the 1940s. Let's see if I have it in my notes. Oh, in the 1960s anyway, I would say from the 1950s onward, what happened was they perfected the ice pick method. So if you were having trouble with depression or anxiety, or you weren't fitting into the model the way you were told you were supposed to, you would go into the doctor right in his office, you'd have a seat, and he'd take a long metal instrument that looks like a nail, but was narrower, and it looked very much like an ice pick. In fact, in the beginning, they used ice picks, and they would insert the tip in the corner of the eye, because behind the eye, the shell of your skull is its thinnest. And they'd take a hammer and they'd tap, tap, tap that into the skull, and then they would move it back and forth so that the inside of your brain tissue was being shredded. And that's what they used to do. And that's not that long ago, guys, not that long ago, okay? So you can see why people would choose to have their memories suppressed so that they can be safe and not have to share this information with other people. And then in the 1980s, what they did was the pharmaceutical industry then started, because there was a lot of bad things that happened to people who had lobotomies. They called them frontal lobotomies. They'd have brain hemorrhages and die and all that kind of stuff. But with the new pharmaceutical industry, which is really getting underway by the 1980s, they had all these pharmaceutical drugs for people to take. So they switched from physical lobotomies to chemical lobotomies. And a chemical lobotomy does the same thing as a physical lobotomy, except it does it chemically. It destroys parts of your brain and prevents you from spiritual and intergalactic progress of the human race. Now, if you don't believe me, do your own research. Please do your own research. In fact, I never want you to believe what I tell you. I want you to go out and do your own research. I want you to have your own experiences. I'm just here to kind of turn on a light to help get you going. So what can happen when we go public with our experiences? The powers that control this earthly construct are so threatened by this emergent insight that they pathologize these experiences and they punish the truth tellers with brain-altering treatments, which destroy our ability to be aware of our paranormal realities. Look it up. It's called extreme deviance. Under psychiatry, look up extreme deviance. It's also known as psychosis, even though these experiences are nothing of the sort. And I want to give you a little bit more information about that, just so you can see how important it is for us to take good care of our brains. You can go online to nrp.org if you want to do more research. They claim that about 50,000 people received lobotomies in the United States alone. That doesn't include England or Canada. Oh my God, Canada has such a real evil history when it comes to the MK Ultra programs from the States. There's a whole story about that. Maybe one day I'll do a podcast about it. So there was a doctor named Walter Freeman, and he himself performed about 3,500 lobotomies during his career, out of which about 2,500 were the ice pick procedure. Yeah, that's what they called it, and that's how they did it. You could go into the doctor's office, be in there for 15 minutes, and come out a whole different person, all docile and compliant, and everything that the parasite class wants you to be so that you can maintain their construct. Well, in 1967, Freeman performed his final lobotomy on a patient who died from a brain hemorrhage. Pretty horrible stuff. You can also look up LiveSciencecom. They claim that lobotomies are still being done today, but they claim that it's a much more elegant procedure. And I'll just quote from the guy named Lerner from that website. He said, "You're not going in with an ice pick and monkeying around." So they claim that removal of specific brain areas, called psychosurgery, is only used to treat patients for whom all other allopathic treatments have failed. So again, extreme deviance. It's in the DSM-4 or 5 or 6 or 7 or whatever they're up to. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger as they take normal, healthy experiences and perceptions, and then they weaponize them and put them in a book to claim that this is extreme deviance, and this is very harmful to the person and to communities and to the construct. Well, I find it pretty disgusting. So in the 1980s, they replaced removing or destroying parts of your brain with antipsychotic drugs and other psychotropic pharmaceuticals. You know, a lot of people that I know who have had trouble with depression, anxiety, which is just about everybody, almost everybody has been on Ativan and Prozac and so many antipsychotics, all of that stuff to try to bring about some relief, but it doesn't work that way. What would be a better relief is just letting people have their perceptions and validating them and helping them to be happy and healthy in their alternative realities rather than trying to turn them into machines. But anyway, all these drugs, well, I'm just going to go back to my notes because I keep skipping stuff. I want you to have as much of this as possible. So ET contact is still considered extreme mental deviance, and so disclosure is often met with stigma, ridicule, and psychotropic medications, which cause chemical lobotomization. This treatment, whether surgical or chemical, involves destroying brain tissue and inborn sensory mechanisms so that we no longer have the biological technology for spiritual and ET contact. According to scientificamerican.com, at least 1 in 6 US adults reported taking a psychiatric drug, and Rehabscom reports that psychiatric medications kill more Americans than heroin. Yeah, so I encourage you to take a look at that. So where I want to come back to with my ET experiences, this is why our memories are suppressed before we come back to life here on Earth. And it's important to know that this isn't some kind of mental rape. It's not some horrible thing. We actually agree to forget. While we're having our experiences, we agree to forget, and we cooperate with 1 or 2 or perhaps 3 off-world beings who have a special gift in helping us to bury our memories very, very deep. The memories are there, but we can't access them until we experience a trigger of sorts. Now, that's really interesting because we're now coming into the time where we can actually be more tolerant of people with alternative experiences. And social media has really helped a lot. And more people are having memories triggered. And sometimes we suddenly access a small amount of memory, and other times we remember quite a lot. And meditation and hypnotherapy absolutely will help. So that's about it for today. This is sort of chapter 1 clarification. And my next video in this series is going to be chapter 2, my paranormal history and background. I want you to understand that contact often runs through many generations, and it also produces all kinds of skills like healing and understanding and compassion and all kinds of neat stuff. And so we're going to get into that in my next video. But in the meantime, thank you for joining me. Please share. It's important that people get this information so that they can know that there is alternatives. We don't have to go by the status quo or the mainstream media or a mediocre kind of subservient life. We don't need to do that. We can have amazing experiences. We can meet other beings. We can learn from them, and we can have a really good time doing all this. So that's it for today. And thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you again soon.